Jaya Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paricharya Stotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shri Lacy Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Beauty Founder Acharya Jaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Entire Gaur Pamanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, titled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya, text number 51. Tato vayamad pramukha yadarte babu vitat babu babhu vimatman karavamakimte tvamna swachaksu paridehi sakya deva kriyarte yadanugrahanam tato vayamad pramukha yadarte Babhu vimatman karavamakimte Tvamna swachaksu paridehi sakya Deva kriyarte yadanugrahana. Word for word translation. Tata, therefore. Vayam, all of us. Mat pramukha, coming from the total cosmos. The Mahat Tattva. Yat arte, for the purpose of which Babhu Vima, created, Atman, O Supreme Self, Karavama, shall do, Kim, what, Te, your service, Tvam, yourself, Na, to us, Swachaksu, personal plan, Paridehi, specifically grant us, Sakya, with potency to work, Deva, O Lord, Kriya Arte, for acting, Yat, from which, Anugrahanam, of those who are specifically favored. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Shri Lacy Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. O Supreme Self, please give us who are created in the beginning from the Mahatattva, the total cosmic energy, your kind directions on how we shall act. Kindly award us your perfect knowledge and potency, so that we can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. Purport. The Lord creates this mature world and impregnates the mature energy with the living entities who will act in the material world. All these actions have a divine plan behind them. The plan is to give the conditioned souls who so desire a chance to enjoy sense gratification. But there is another plan behind the creation, to help the living entities realize that they are created for the transcendental sense gratification of the Lord, and not for their individual sense gratification. This is the constitutional position of the living entities. The Lord is one without a second, and He expands Himself into many for His transcendental pleasure. All the expansions, the Vishnu Tattvas, the Jiva Tattvas, and the Shakti Tattvas, the personalities of Godhead, the living entities, and the different potential energies, are different offshoots from the same one Supreme Lord. The Jiva Tattvas are separated expansions of the Vishnu Tattvas, and although there are potential differences between them, they are all meant for the transcendental sense gratification of the Supreme Lord. Some of the Jivas, however, wanted to lord it over material nature in imitation of the lordship of the personality of Godhead. Regarding when and why such propensities overcame the pure living entities, it can only be explained that the Jiva Tattvas have infinitesimal independence, and that due to misuse of this independence, some of the living entities have become implicated in the conditions of cosmic creation, and are therefore called Nitya Baddhas, or eternally conditioned souls. The expansions of Vedic wisdom also give the Nitya Baddhas, the conditioned living entities, a chance to improve, and those who take advantage of such transcendental knowledge gradually regain their lost consciousness of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. The demigods are amongst the conditioned souls who have developed this pure consciousness of service to the Lord, but who at the same time continue to desire to lord it over the material energy. Such mixed consciousness puts a conditioned soul in the position of managing the affairs of this creation. The demigods are entrusted leaders of the conditioned souls. As some of the old prisoners in government jails are entrusted with some responsible work of prison management, so the demigods are improved conditioned souls acting as representatives of the Lord in the material creation. Such demigods are devotees of the Lord in the material world, and when completely free from all material desire to lord it over the material energy, they become pure devotees and have no desire but to serve the Lord. Therefore, any living entity who desires a position in the material world may desire so in the service of the Lord, and may seek power and intelligence from the Lord, as exemplified by the demigods in this particular verse. One cannot do anything unless he is enlightened and empowered by the Lord. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Mata smitir jnanam apohanam cha. All recollections, knowledge, etc., as well as all forgetfulness are engineered by the Lord, who is sitting within the heart of everyone. The intelligent man seeks the help of the Lord, and the Lord helps the sincere devotees engaged in His multifarious services. The demigods are entrusted by the Lord to create different species of living entities according to their past deeds. They are herein asking the favor of the Lord for the intelligence and power to carry out their task. Similarly, any conditioned soul may also engage in the service of the Lord under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, and thus gradually become freed from the entanglement of material existence. The spiritual master is the manifested representative of the Lord, and anyone who puts himself under the guidance of a spiritual master and acts accordingly is said to be acting in terms of buddhi yoga, as explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.41. Vavasayatmika buddhir ekehe kurunandana bahusaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. Mama Jnanatmrindasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksulmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you for tuning in today to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So today we're finishing this chapter of the third canto, chapter 5. We're reading the last text, text 51. So yesterday, Ganesham Prabhu, he was giving a nice summary of the chapter, of how we saw in this chapter that after Vidura, he puts forward questions to Maitreya Muni with great humility. Maitreya Muni, he starts responding by talking about how the creation of this universe happened. And Ganesham Prabhu yesterday was giving a nice summary, explaining how everything starts with the glance of Mahavishnu. So there's the unmanifest material nature known as Pradhan, and after Mahavishnu glances at Pradhan, then Ganesham Prabhu was explaining that the main, along with the living entities, Mahavishnu, he also injects the time energy, the time potency into the Pradhan. Then after all the living entities and the time energy is impregnated into the unmanifest material nature, then material nature it becomes activated. And then Pradhana, it becomes Mahatattva. So unmanifest material nature, that's Pradhan, and then after being glanced by Mahavishnu and after being injected with the living entities, after being agitated by the time energy, it becomes Mahatattva, and that's when the three modes, they come to life. So in Pradhan, the three modes are also there, but they're inactive. But in Mahatattva, then they become activated. And we read in this chapter how Mahatattva is predominantly in passion and goodness, and then from the Mahatattva comes false ego, which is predominantly in the mode of ignorance. And then from false ego comes three different Shaktis. One is Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Dravya Shakti. And Jnana Shakti, which is in goodness, we read in this chapter that from Jnana Shakti comes the mind and the different devatas. And all these prayers which we are reading now at the end of this chapter, these are all prayers by these demigods. So they're created by Mahavishnu, but after being created, they don't understand what is it or how they should all interact and act together to maintain or populate or to do their service properly in this universe. So they're bewildered, and that's why they're offering these prayers that, my Lord, please, I'll read the translation today again for this last verse of this chapter. O Supreme Self, please give us who are created in the beginning from the Mahatattva, the total cosmic energy, your kind directions on how we shall act. So these demigods are created, but they don't understand what is it we should be doing, how we should act, and how we should do a particular duty in this universe. So then they're praying to the Lord, to Vishnu, please give us intelligence on how we should do our service for you. Kindly award us your perfect knowledge and potency so that we can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. So from false ego, through Jnana Shakti comes these different devatas in mind. Then through Kriya Shakti, which is in passion, we read it, intelligence comes, and the different sense organs, working senses and knowledge acquiring senses. And then finally from Dravya Shakti, which is in primarily mode of ignorance, comes the different sense objects, the Tanmatras and also the Pancha Mahabhuta, the five gross material elements, earth, water, fire, ether. So in this way we were giving a nice description in this chapter by Maitreya Muni of how the creation happens at the start of the universe. And at the end of this chapter we are reading a lot of nice beautiful verses by these demigods offering their prayers to the Lord for intelligence and potency to do their particular duties of further creation work in the universe. So that's how this universe is created, but today in the purport, Prabhupada goes on to explain about, okay, we understand how creation happens at the start of the universe. but what is the purpose behind the whole creation? What is the whole reason or the plan behind Krishna creating this material universe? So that's what Prabhupada discusses today in the first paragraph of the purport. So it's a long purport, there's 3 paragraphs, we'll go through each one, some of the points Prabhupada is making. And today is also the disappearance day of Bhakreshwar Pandit, one of the great associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's also the auspicious occasion of Hera Panchami, which happens, a festival that happens 5 days after the Ratha Yatra. So at the end of the class, based on how much time we have, we'll discuss a bit about these festivals also. So first thing Prabhupada's explained today, the plan or the purpose behind why Krishna has created this whole material world. Okay, we understand the details of the procedure or the steps in which it's taking place, but what is the whole reason? Prabhupada's explaining that the plan behind this whole material creation is to give the conditioned souls who so desire a chance to enjoy sense gratification. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains that there is 2 reasons why Krishna creates this material universe. Number 1 is to give the jivas a chance to gratify their senses or a chance to enjoy separate from Krishna. So in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining that Krishna, he is one, but he expands himself into many for the sake of enjoyment. So for the sake of enjoyment, he expands as Jiva Tattvas, as Vishnu Tattvas, and as Shakti Tattvas. But Prabhupada explains that some jivas, when they have this, every single jiva, they have a little independence. And by misusing that independence, Prabhupada explains that when, through the little independence, the jivas, they just have this desire. What would it be like, to enjoy separate from Krishna? What would it be like if I was the center and I would enjoy myself? So the moment the jiva desires like that, then he falls down to the material world. And that's the whole reason Krishna has created this material world, to satisfy this desire of the jivas to enjoy separate from him. So that's the first reason. And the second reason Prabhupada explains, but there is another plan behind the creation. And what's that second plan? Is to help the living entities realize that they are created for the transcendental sense gratification of the soul and not for their individual sense gratification. So the jiva, he has this desire or this thought of enjoying separate from Krishna, but at the same time, Krishna, he understands that constitutionally, all of these jivas, all of these souls who are part and parcel of him, constitutionally they can never enjoy separate from him. They can never be happy separate from him. Because constitutionally, we're all Jivera Swarupahoy, Krishna Nityadas. Constitutionally, we're all servants of Krishna. So when we come to this material world away from Krishna, we are put in an awkward situation where we can't enjoy happiness. Prabhupada, he gives the example usually of a fish out of water. The constitutional position of a fish is to enjoy in the water. That's his constitutional place. As long as the fish is in the water, he's happy and he enjoys life. The moment the fish comes out of his constitutional position onto the land, then he'll just suffer. No matter what you give the fish, you can give the fish, Prabhupada says, nice rasgulla, samosa, sandesh, burfi. You can give him nice TV, a nice house, a brand new car. No matter what you give the fish outside water, the fish can never be happy, because outside of the water is not the constitutional position of the fish. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that for all of us, our constitutional position is to be in connection with Krishna, is to be serving Shri Radha Gopinath. The moment we're not serving them, the moment we're disconnected from them, it's like the fish out of water. The fish will just suffer. No matter what you give the fish can never be happy and satisfied. So Krishna, he understands this. On one hand, he sees that these jivas, certain jivas, they have this desire to enjoy separate from him. And Krishna, he respects that. He has given this tiny independence to all conditioned souls, to all souls. But at the same time, Krishna, he understands that although he has this desire, he can never be happy this way. So Krishna, he lets us enjoy separate from the material world, but at the same time, Prabhupada is explaining, he also arranges things in a certain way in this material world by which the jiva can rectify his consciousness and come back to the spiritual world. Because constitutionally, the jiva can never enjoy separate from Krishna. So therefore, Prabhupada is saying here, but there is another plan behind the creation, which is to help the living entities realize that they are created for the transcendental sense gratification of the Lord and not for their individual sense gratification. So only when the soul is engaged in gratifying the senses of Krishna, only in that situation is the soul happy, because that is its nature, that is its constitutional position. I was reading one purport recently, and Prabhupada was further elaborating on this point of sense gratification. Prabhupada, it's in 8th canto, in one verse, Prabhupada is explaining that there is a science behind sense gratification. And one who knows this science behind sense gratification, he can always be happy and satisfied in life. Prabhupada explains that we are not this body and we are the soul. And Prabhupada says just like this gross body has gross senses, so we have the eyes, the nose, the ears, the sense of touch, and these are the senses of the gross body. But we're not this body. And Prabhupada says the soul inside, under so many layers of covering, the soul also has senses, and these senses are spiritual senses. So the soul also has eyes, the soul has ears, the soul has the sense of tasting, touch, and all these different things. So Prabhupada says we have our material senses, gross senses, which we can perceive outside, but inside we also have spiritual senses. But the problem is, all of these spiritual senses, which is all the energy of the soul, constitution of the soul, it's all covered over at this moment. And because we're not this body, we're also not our material eyes, we're also not our material gross sense of touch, we're also not our material sense of ears, because one day this body will go. So Prabhupada explains this gross sense is not actually us. So if we try and get happiness by trying to gratify the gross eyes, or try to gratify the gross ears, or the gross sense of touch, we can never get full satisfaction and contentment or happiness, because we're not these eyes, we're not these ears or nose on the outside. We're actually the soul, and the soul has spiritual eyes, spiritual sense of touch, and so on. So Prabhupada says, he quotes this verse in this Prabhupada's reading, Sarvapadi Vinurmuktvam Tat Paratmana Nirmalam. So Prabhupada says to realize these spiritual senses, firstly through devotional service, one needs to do Sarvapadi Vinurmuktvam. One needs to overcome these layers of false ego and anarthas and ignorance. Then slowly these spiritual senses can get uncovered. Then once the spiritual senses are uncovered, then when one takes to devotional service, one will get actual satisfaction. Sarvapadi Vinurmuktvam Tatparetvana Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. So Prabhupada then goes on to explain that when we engage ourselves in devotional service, for example, when we engage ourselves in hearing about Krishna, our transcendental years, our spiritual years of the soul, they're actually experiencing pleasure. And that's nourishment for the soul, that's nourishment for our spiritual years. When we come and take darshan of Radha Gopinath, then we're nourishing the eyes of the soul, the spiritual eyes or the transcendental eyes. In this way, our soul gets actual nourishment. And this way, Prabhupada explains, this is the real way of getting actual happiness and actual satisfaction in life. Because these gross senses is not actually us, we're actually the soul. So therefore, we should be focusing on how to gratify our spiritual senses. So gratifying our spiritual senses means through our spiritual ears we hear about Krishna, through our spiritual eyes we see Krishna, through our spiritual sense of smell we smell prasad or smell the incense offered to the Lord or the tulsi offered to the Lord, and this way we make spiritual advancement. And this one verse Ghanshyam Prabhu was quoting last week from the 9th canto, Yasmin Satkarna Piyuse Yasmin Satkarna Piyuse Yatha Tirtha Baram Sakrit. Then this Shotanjali Upasprisya Dhunoti Karma Vasanam. So comes in the 9th canto, last chapter. This verse is explaining that Yasmin Satkarna Piyuse, that when one hears Krishna Katha, Satkarna Piyuse means, Satkarna means, Karna means ears, and Satkarna means, again the same thing, the spiritual ears. So for the spiritual ears, hearing Krishna Katha is most relishable, is most pleasing. Just like Prabhupada, he'll give the example, there's a bird in the cage, and there'll be a lady. And forgetting the bird in the cage, the lady will just be cleaning the outside, the cage. And the lady will just forget about the bird inside, not feed the bird. And what will happen? The bird, which is the actual object of importance, the bird will starve and die. And Prabhupada uses this to say, this is what everyone in this material world is doing. They're just They're forgetting about the soul inside, and instead they're trying to just nicely gratify their external body, which they're not. So instead of focusing on trying to gratify our gross senses, the Shastras explain, we should focus on nourishing our spiritual senses. So this verse explains that Yasmin Sat Karna Piyusa, that for the Sat Karna, for the spiritual sense of hearing Krishna Katha is a great source of pleasure. Then Yasas Tirtha Vare Sakrit, that whenever someone is engaged in hearing Krishna Katha or hearing about Krishna's glories, then that very moment he is hearing Krishna Katha, that place immediately becomes the best of all holy places of pilgrimage. So at this moment, because we're hearing and chanting by Krishna Katha, according to Bhagavatam, this place where Krishna Katha is going, this place is said to be the best of all places of pilgrimage. Yasas Tirtha Vare Sakrit. Wherever Krishna Katha is chanted, no matter where it might be, regardless of the location, that place immediately becomes a holy place. Then Shrotanjali Upasprisya. Upasprisya Prabhupada translates as, Sprisya means touching, and Prabhupada he translates Upasprisya as touching, just like one touches the Ganges water. So just like when one goes and takes bath in Ganges and one gets purified, in the same way, Shrotanjali, when one hears Krishna Katha or transcendental sound vibration through his spiritual senses, then he automatically becomes purified. Dhunati karma vasanam. So that's the last line. Dhunati means completely extinguishing, and karma vasanam. Just by hearing Krishna Katha, all the vasanas we have, Prabhu was explaining last week about vasanas are these deep-rooted material desires we have embedded in our consciousness, and these deep mature attachments which have been present in our heart through countless lifetimes. Even it's explained that when we give up our body, the material desires and impressions continue with us, and even at the time of annihilation, when all the living entities, they go and merge into the body of Vishnu, even at that time the material desires continue to stay. And then again, when next creation happens, the living entity is born with the same material desires and attachments. So it's explained that in the Shastras, that material desires are so powerful and so invincible that even at the time of annihilation, these material desires don't get destroyed. Everything else gets destroyed, the planets get destroyed, everything. But these desires of enjoyment that the souls carry in their heart, it always stays with them. Even after they merge into the body of Vishnu, still it stays with them, and when they come out again they come out with these desires. But these deep-rooted desires, just by hearing about Krishna, one can easily overcome. So in this way, Prabhupada explains that this is the science behind sense gratification. If we actually want to be happy and satisfied in life, then instead of focusing on trying to satisfy the gross senses, we try and satisfy the spiritual senses. So in this way, Prabhupada goes on to explain that the jivas have infinitesimal independence, and that due to misuse of this independence, we have come into this material world. And the converse is also true. By properly using this independence, we can get out of this material world and go back to the spiritual world. My Guru Maharaj, he explains in his book Bhakti Bhava that at every single moment, we all have a choice to either choose Krishna or Maya. And the more, my Guru Maharaj explains that this choice, we have like a choice muscle. And the more often we choose Krishna over Maya, the more our spiritual determination will increase. And the more stronger and stronger we'll become in our spiritual life. And this choice of choosing Krishna and Maya happens at every moment. And just like some time ago there was an ad on TV about how to give up smoking. And this ad was showing a person flexing his muscles. And the point of the ad was that willpower is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So just like a person who wants to build muscle, he'll lift more and more weight. But just by flexing his muscles over and over and over and again, the muscles will increase and increase and increase in size. So in the same way, this smoking ad was explaining that the more you say no to smoking, the more your willpower increase, and one day you can completely give up smoking. So in the same way, my Guru Maharaj is explaining that at every moment we have this choice to either choose Krishna or to choose Maya. And the more we choose Krishna, the more our spiritual determination will increase, and the more stronger we'll become in our spiritual life. And this choice will always be there right throughout the whole day. And it starts right from the start of the day. Just like when we wake up in the morning, we put our alarm for 4 o'clock. At that time, we have a choice, whether we'll wake up or whether we'll go back to sleep. And usually this dilemma is there at 4 o'clock. Half of your mind will be saying that, oh, let me just sleep a bit longer. It's very cold, I don't want to get up. But if we continue sleeping, then that's choosing Maya, because Prabhupada wanted us all to wake up early in the morning. And if we choose Krishna, means that, okay, when the alarm rings, we get up, we take shower, and we come and we attend Mangalarti. And then when we come for Mangalarti, again, we have the choice again, whether I'm going to sing enthusiastically, very loudly for pleasure of Gopinath, whether I'm going to dance very nicely for pleasure of Gopinath and his devotees, or whether, I'll just be lazy and just lay back and not sing enthusiastically, not dance. So again, that choice is there. If we choose to sing loudly and dance nicely in front of Radha Gopinath, then, okay, we're choosing Krishna. If we choose to be a bit lazy and not sing and dance enthusiastically, okay, then we're choosing Maya. So in this way, throughout the whole day, this choice is there. When we're taking prasad, again, we have the choice that prasad might taste nice, but if we overeat, then that's choosing Maya. As Rupa Goswami explains, that overeating is one of the things which is detrimental for devotional service. So like this, throughout the whole day, this choice is always there with us. Krishna has given us this little independence, and the more we choose Krishna, the more our spiritual determination to practice devotional service will increase, and the more pleasure we can give to Krishna. And one thing I was thinking, that this choosing Krishna over Maya becomes very easy if we surround ourselves with sincere devotees of the Lord. Because if we're always surrounded by sincere devotees of the Lord, then just by looking at them, we'll be forced to choose Krishna over Maya. For example, early in the morning, you're sleeping in the ashram, and the alarm bell rings, and half your mind will be saying, oh, let's go back to sleep, I don't want to wake up, it's very cold, I just need to sleep a bit longer. But you see all the other Prabhus in the room, they're all waking up, and they're all getting into their gamchas to take shower, then naturally you'll also be forced to also wake up. You'll be thinking, oh, everyone else is getting up, okay, I also need to get up. In the same way we all come to a temple room, and if we see all the other devotees in the temple room, all singing so nicely and loudly, all dancing very nicely for Radha Gopinath, then naturally we'll also be inspired. Even though we might not be feeling so enthusiastic on that particular day, we might be feeling a bit down. Just by watching everyone else, then we also feel a bit awkward, not also singing and dancing nicely. So then naturally we also force ourselves to also sing nicely and dance nicely. So in this way, if we always surround ourselves, if we always keep ourselves in the association of nice, sincere Vaishnavas, then choosing Krishna over Maya it just becomes very easy. We don't have to go through that mental struggle sometimes. Just by watching other devotees, we'll be naturally forced or inclined or inspired to always choose Krishna over Maya. So that's why being in the association of nice devotees is the safest position to be. And that's why if we study the Shastras, Bhagavatam, whenever Krishna, Vishnu gives darshan to a particular devotee, and the devotee will offer prayers, and when it comes to time for benedictions, every single time a devotee is asked for benediction, he always asks this one thing: please give me the Sangha of your devotees. All the great devotees, they all ask for the same thing. Dhruva Maharaj will ask for this, Prahlad Maharaj he asks for this, Prithu Maharaj will ask for this, the Prachetas they'll ask for this. Throughout the whole Bhagavatam, if we study the prayers of all the great devotees, one of the things they always ask for is the association of devotees. And why do they ask for this? Because they understand, as long as I am surrounded by devotees, I'll always be with Krishna. Because wherever there is devotees, they'll always be engaged in devotional service. So if I'm in their association, I'll be forced to engage in devotional service. I'll naturally always remember Krishna, I'll naturally always hear about Krishna, I'll naturally always be engaged in Krishna's service. And my life is perfect. That's why Narottam Das Thakur, Prabhupada will always quote this prayer by Narottam Das Thakur, that Tandera Charana Sevi Bhakte Sanevas Janama Janama Hoy Eya Belas. So Narottam Das Thakur sings that birth after birth, I just simply have this one desire, that birth after birth, I just want to simply worship Krishna's lotus feet in the association of his devotees. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, when Mahaprabhu, he asked Ramananda Roy, what is the most valuable thing in this world? And Ramananda Roy, he responds, the most valuable thing in this world is the association of the devotees. So my Guru Maharaj explains that one can judge how wealthy a person is by the amount of good sangha or the good spiritual association he has. The more spiritual or good association of nice devotees we have in our spiritual life, the more fortunate we are, the more wealthy we are in our spiritual lives. So in this way, one can judge. This is real wealth, my Guru Maharaj explains. So in this way, by making arrangements to always take the association of nice devotees, it becomes easy to use our independence to choose Krishna over Maya. So that's the first part of the purport. Then the second part of the purport, Prabhupada explains that to further help the souls to rectify the consciousness, to come back from the material spiritual world, Krishna, Prabhupada writes here, the expansions of Vedic wisdom also give the Nityabhadas, the conditioned living entities, a chance to improve and to come back, to gain transcendental knowledge and come back. So in CC there is one verse that Maya Mugda Jivera Nahi Swata Krishna Gan Jivera Kripara Koila Krishna Veda Puran. So in CC the same point is explained that Maya Mugda, the living entity, the Jiva, being covered over by the illusory energy, he has forgotten about Krishna. Maya Mugda Jivara Nahi Swata Krishna Gan. So this jnana, or this knowledge of Krishna, of Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's beauty, Krishna's servants, he has lost all of that knowledge. And Krishna, seeing the conditioned soul struggling in this material world, in ignorance of him, Krishna, he feels great compassion upon the jivas. Jivera Kripa. So Krishna, he feels great Kripa, compassionate. Jivera Kripa Koila. Krishna Veda Purana. Out of compassion, Krishna, he compiles the Shastras, the Bhagavatam, and the other Vedic literatures to help the conditioned souls come back to him. And then Prabhupada talks about the demigods. So Prabhupada says the demigods, they're just conditioned souls like us, and they're halfway between pure consciousness and material consciousness, Prabhupada explains. They have mixed consciousness. So on one hand, they're devotees of the Lord, they want to serve Krishna. But on the other hand, Prabhupada explains that they also have the desire to lord it over material nature. They also have the desire to engage in sense gratification. So that's why they're still in this material world, but Krishna, he puts them in charge of managing the different affairs of this universe. And Prabhupada, he gives a nice analogy. As some of the old prisoners in government jails are entrusted with some responsible work of prison management, so the demigods are improved conditioned souls, acting as representatives of the Lord in the material creation. So Prabhupada is explaining this material world is just like a prison house, and the prison is created to rectify the consciousness of the rebellious souls. So these demigods, they're also souls like us, with this rebellious tendency to enjoy separate from Krishna. But just like in a jail, there'll be some prisoners who act nicely and good, and in reward for their nice behavior in the jail, they'll be promoted to some kind of management affair in the actual prison house. Like some of the prisoners, they'll be taken out of some bad prison jail, and they'll be put into some management facility in the jail. For example, they might go into the kitchen and be in charge of serving the food, or in charge of this department or that department. So the demigods are like this. They do a lot of good karma and punya, and they're still in the prison, but they get promoted to the higher planets. And this way Prabhupada explains, this is the demigod's position, that they're like mixed devotees. Then Prabhupada goes on to explain that just like the demigods here, they're begging the Lord for power and intelligence. We should also follow in their footsteps. And Prabhupada is saying, one cannot do anything unless he is enlightened and empowered by the Lord. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Matta smitir ganam apohanam cha. All recollections, knowledge, etc., as well as forgetfulness, are engineered by the Lord, who is sitting within the heart of everyone. The intelligent man seeks the help of the Lord, and the Lord helps the sincere devotees engaged in his multifarious services. So classical example of this is we see in the first canto of Bhagavatam, where Arjuna is coming back from Dwarka, and Maharaj Yudhishthira asks Arjuna that, why do you look so morose? You know, your face is swollen, what has happened? And Maharaj Yudhishthira, he puts forward different reasons. Then Arjuna, he explains that actually Krishna, along with the Yadus, they've all left this planet. And Arjuna goes on to explain that previously, by Krishna's mercy, I was able to do so many amazing things. By Krishna's mercy, I was able to defeat Lord Shiva in battle. By Krishna's mercy, I was able to, help even Indra. I was invited to Swargaloka to help the demigods. By Krishna's mercy, I was able to defeat great warriors like Bhishma, Karna, Dronacharya, Kripacharya. By Krishna's mercy, I was able to win over Draupadi. This challenge that was during Draupadi's Swayamvara, which no one else could do, I was able to do this. So in this way, Arjuna, he gives a big list of verses about all those wonderful things he was able to do, being empowered by Krishna. Then he goes on to say, but now that Krishna is gone, I am the same Arjuna and I have the same Gandiva bow, I have the same arrows, everything else is the same. But because Krishna is gone, I'm not empowered by Krishna anymore. I was defeated in battle by just a group of cowherd men. So as we know that when Arjuna was taking the queens of Dwarka to Hastinapur, along the way, he gets attacked by some cowherd men, and Arjuna is unable to fight them or defeat them in battle. So Arjuna, as he's recounting to Yudhishthira, just see, before I was able to do so many amazing things. I was able to help Indra, the demigods. I was able to defeat Lord Shiva. I was able to defeat so many great warriors. But now I'm the same Arjuna. I have the same arrows. I have the same bow. But still, look what happened now. I was defeated by just by ordinary cowherd men. So this is one example where we can see that actually all empowerment, any single ability that we have, it's all coming from Krishna. And we have this experience many times in our day-to-day lives. For example, like singing in front of Radha Gopinath, every day we'll come and sing Mangalati or any other puja, and even though we sing every day, we've memorized all the lyrics. Sometimes we'll come in front of Radha Gopinath and we'll sing, and suddenly we'll just get a mind blank and we'll just forget one of the lines of the song or the prayer. So again, Krishna is showing that, he can just, even though we've sung it like hundreds and thousands of times, Krishna, he can just choose to just withdraw that memory. Same thing on book distribution. We see that we'll go out and one day a lot of books will be able to distribute by Krishna empowerment. Another day we'll go to the same location, we'll go to the same suburb to distribute books. Everything else will be the same. We'll have the same books to distribute, same Gita, Bhagavatam, Krishna book. The location will be the same, the weather will be the same, everything will be the same. But one day we'll be able to distribute, this many books. Another day we'll only be able to distribute just a few books. So again, through this, we can see that actually any single ability we have, anything we're doing good, it's all by the grace of Krishna. It's all coming from Krishna's empowerment. Therefore, Prabhupada says that one who is intelligent, he seeks the help of the Lord. And the Lord helps the sincere devotees engaged in his multifarious services. Finally, in the last paragraph purport, Prabhupada is explaining that just as the demigods are praying for guidance and empowerment, we should also be praying to our spiritual masters for guidance and empowerment. Similarly, any conditioned soul may also engage in the service of the Lord under the guidance of an expert spiritual master and thus gradually become freed from the entanglement of mature existence. The spiritual master is the manifested representative of the Lord, and anyone who puts himself under the guidance of the spiritual master and acts accordingly is said to be acting in terms of Buddha Yoga. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, Vavasayatmika Buddhir Eka Kuru Nandana Bahu Saka Hyanantascha Buddhayo Vavasayinam. So this last verse, Prabhupada will often quote in regard to carrying out the instruction of the spiritual master, Vavasayatmika Buddhir Eka Kuru Nandana, that how one's attention or consciousness should be single-pointed in focusing on serving the instructions of the Guru. And there's one example given of this in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, where the Brahmana is talking about the 24 Gurus. One of the things the Brahmana observes is the arrow maker. Once he was in his travels, he was going and he was seeing there was a person making an arrow. And while this person was making an arrow, there was a huge marriage procession going by. And in India, when marriage is celebrated, they're celebrated with great pomp and a lot of music, big elephants, a lot of drums and music, and big, huge sound. Now, even though a huge marriage ceremony was going past, creating so much noise, this Brahmana, he observes that this arrow maker, he didn't even notice the marriage ceremony going past. Even though it went right past him, he was so much absorbed and engaged in his service, he didn't even notice the marriage ceremony going past. So through this person, the Brahmana, he learned the lesson that how one should be very absorbed in serving the Lord. Or in this case, serving the instructions of the spiritual master. One should forget everything else and just focus simply on carrying out the instructions of the Guru. And Prabhupada explains this is the secret to spiritual advancement. the more strictly, Prabhupada explained, more strictly one follows the instructions of the spiritual master, the more quickly he'll advance in spiritual life. So in this way, Prabhupada finishes today's purport. So we'll quickly talk a bit about Vakreshwara Pandit. We have a bit of time. So today is his disappearance day. And Vakreshwara Pandit, he's one of the famous associates of Mahaprabhu. He's known for his famous dancing. So it's said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that when Mahaprabhu used to sing, Vakreshwara Pandit, he would dance for Mahaprabhu. And he was such a great exalted dancer of the Lord that he could continuously dance for 72 hours. So 72 hours is 3 days non-stop. So 3 days non-stop, he would just dance. And his pastimes are there in both Navadvip and also in Jagannath Puri. So as we know, 24 years Mahaprabhu spent in Navadvip and then 24 years in Jagannath Puri. And Vakreshwara Pandit, while Mahaprabhu was in Navadvip doing Sankirtan pastimes in Srivas Thakur's house, at that time in the Srivas Sangan, Vakreshwara Pandit used to dance for Mahaprabhu. And later on, when Mahaprabhu went to Jagannath Puri, Vakreshwara Pandit, again during the Ratha Yatra, Mahaprabhu used to have different parties, and each party would have a lead singer, a lead dancer, different mridanga players, katha players. And one of the parties, Vakreshwara Pandit, again, he was the lead dancer for them. So again, during Puri Yatra, Vakreshwara Pandit, he used to be one of the main dancers, dancing for the pleasure of Mahaprabhu. And one time, he was dancing so ecstatically, he was given in CC, that he comes and he falls at the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu, and he prays to Mahaprabhu, that Mahaprabhu, please bless me with 10,000 Gandharvas to sing for me while I dance, so that way I can dance even more nicely for your pleasure. And then Mahaprabhu responds by glorifying even more and saying that Vakreshwara Pandit, you're just like one of my wings. If I had another devotee like you, if I had another wing like you, I'll be able to fly. In this way, Mahaprabhu, he glorifies Vakreshwara Pandit. And other descriptions are given in Chaitanya Bhagavat of how he would go into so much ecstasy while dancing, he would display all different symptoms of love of Godhead. And in relation to him, there's one particular pastime given in the Chaitanya Bhagavat in relation to a devotee or a person called Devananda Pandit. So this person, Devananda Pandit, he was a person in Navadvip Dham, and he was around during Mahaprabhu's time, but he wasn't a devotee, he wasn't a Vaishnava. Throughout his whole life, he was studying Bhagavatam. And not only studying Bhagavatam, but he was also reciting and speaking from the Bhagavatam, giving Bhagavatam classes. But he wasn't a devotee, he was more of an impersonalist. So he would speak from the Bhagavatam, but he would never talk about bhakti. He would talk about everything else except for bhakti. And he was well known in all of Navadvip as a great speaker of Bhagavatam. Throughout his whole childhood, he was studying Bhagavatam, and later on, he was giving Bhagavatam classes. So Srivas Thakur, he heard that there's this person called Devananda Pandit. He's known for reciting Bhagavatam very nicely. So one day Srivas Thakur, he goes to his house to hear Bhagavatam for him. And Srivas Thakur comes, and Devananda Pandit is reciting some verses from Bhagavatam. And Srivas Thakur, just by hearing a few verses of Bhagavatam being recited by Devananda Pandit, Srivas Thakur immediately he goes into ecstasy, and he starts exhibiting different transcendental symptoms of love of Godhead. Now all the students of Devananda Pandit, they see Srivas Thakur going to ecstasy. And because they're in ignorance, because their master is blind, so also the students are also blind, they can't understand that Srivas Thakur is displaying symptoms of love of God. And they just think that Srivas Thakur is just creating a disturbance in the class. So they forcibly take Srivas Thakur and they throw him out of the class onto the street. And when Mahaprabhu, obviously he's Antaryami, he sees all this. And when Mahaprabhu, he understands all this, he's very upset, he's very angry at Devananda Pandit, because Devananda Pandit, he was watching all this. He was watching that, okay, Shivananda Thakur is a pure devotee of the Lord. He's exhibiting symptoms of love of God, and he's watching his students take him out of the class and dump him outside. But he doesn't say anything, because he's blinded by his impersonalist understanding, and his students are also blinded. So in this way, this in Chaitanya Bhagavat, this is the opening scene that's given of Devananda Pandit. And another scene in Chaitanya Bhagavat is explained that one time Mahaprabhu is talking to his devotees about this person, Devananda Pandit. And Mahaprabhu, he's like really furious furiously chastising Devananda Pandit, that this Devananda Pandit, although he externally makes a show studying Bhagavatam, actually he doesn't know a single word of Bhagavatam. And Mahaprabhu, just like Lord Nrsimhadev's anger, that anger is for the offense to his pure devotee Prahlad Maharaj. In the same way, Mahaprabhu he exhibits a similar kind of angry mood in relation to Devananda Pandit, that this Devananda Pandit externally presents himself as a great scholar of Bhagavatam, but he has created such a great offense against my pure devotee Srivas Thakur. So like this, Mahaprabhu, there's a series of verses where he's chastising Devananda Pandit. But later on happens, Pandit, and pleases Vakreshwar Pandit, Mahaprabhu immediately becomes pleased. Later on, when Mahaprabhu is giving darshan, a thing in Jagannath Puri, so the whole time, Mahaprabhu spent 24 years in Navadvip. And during that time, this Devananda Pandit, he was also there in Navadvip. But he never took the opportunity to go and meet Mahaprabhu. Because he was an impersonalist, so he never understood the value of Mahaprabhu's association. But now that after his heart was transformed by serving Vakreshwar Pandit, now in Jagannath Puri, he goes and visits Mahaprabhu. And just before he visits Mahaprabhu, there's another Brahmana who comes and offers obeisances to Mahaprabhu. And with great feeling, he repents and says, cries his heart out, saying that, my dear Lord, in the past before, I have offended a lot of your Vaishnavas. I have spoken very badly. I have done a lot of sadhu ninda. I have spoken very harshly about your great Vaishnavas, about the chanting of your devotees. And now I understand what a great fool I was, and I'm feeling very bad. What can I do to repent for all the sins of the sadhu ninda which I did in the past? And when Mahaprabhu, he sees this Brahmana genuinely repenting, it's mentioned Mahaprabhu, he smiles affectionately. And Chaitanya Bhagavad explains that although this Brahmana, he had done so much sin to do even Vaishnava aparad by blaspheming devotees, still because he was genuinely repenting for his past sins and was genuinely asking for a way to atone, Mahaprabhu was pleased. In this way, Chaitanya Bhagavad explains that even if we do something as bad as Vaishnava aparad sadhu ninda, if we honestly come and reveal ourselves to Mahaprabhu that, okay, I've done this, if we honestly repent for it, then Mahaprabhu, seeing that genuine repentance, he smiles and he'll bestow his grace upon us and he'll help us overcome that aparad. So then Mahaprabhu, he gives the solution to this Brahmana, that through that very mouth by which you were drinking the poison of sadhu ninda, through that mouth by which you were blaspheming devotees and drinking the poison, through that very same mouth, you take in the nectar of glorifying devotees. So you just simply, using that same mouth, just glorify your devotees, glorify the service, and this way you can atone for whatever Vaishnava aparad you did in the past. So in this way, Mahaprabhu forgives this devotee, instructs him, then he goes. Then Devananda Pandit comes. And as he's coming to Mahaprabhu, he's a bit hesitant because he knows in the past Mahaprabhu was very angry and upset with him because of what he did to Srivas Thakur. So very hesitantly Devananda Pandit comes. But surprisingly, Mahaprabhu, instead of showing any anger towards Devananda Pandit, he welcomes him. And Mahaprabhu says that, Devananda Pandit, I'm very pleased with you because you have served my pure devotee Vakreshwara Pandit. Because you served Vakreshwara Pandit, all of the offenses you did in the past, it's all gone. I forgive all of those offenses, and now because of your service to Vakreshwara Pandit, pure love of God has, I'll bless you with love of God. And in this way, Chaitanya Bhagavad explains that there's one verse, actually it's quoted by Vrindavan Das Thakur from Bhagavatam, which explains that one might serve Krishna himself, but perfection of life might not be guaranteed. But if one serves the devotee of the Lord, then 100% perfection of life, love of God, it is guaranteed. So in this way, Mahaprabhu instructs Devananda Pandit that although through your whole life you were wasting your life just with this impersonal understanding and preaching this Mayavad philosophy, although you did this offense against Srivas Thakur, all of those things are nullified just by your service to Vakreshwar Pandit. So from this we learn the importance of serving the great Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. By that, all of the aparadhs or offenses we committed, all of them can be nullified. And then Devananda Pandit, he is also lamenting and he is also repenting that Mahaprabhu, since childhood I've been reading Bhagavatam, but I've just been preaching Mayavad philosophy. Now I'm finally understanding that actually I don't understand Bhagavatam. Can you please tell me or instruct me on how I should preach from Bhagavatam. Can you please instruct me in how I should give Bhagavatam class? Because for Devananda Pandit, giving Bhagavatam class was like his profession. That's all he knew, that's all he was doing from childhood. Since childhood he would study Bhagavatam and just recite Bhagavatam. So that was like his profession. But now he's understanding that actually I'm a fool, I don't understand Bhagavatam. So then he puts this question forward to Mahaprabhu that, how should I give Bhagavatam class? Can you please give me some instructions on how one should give Bhagavatam class? Then Mahaprabhu, he instructs him on how one should recite Bhagavatam. Mahaprabhu says that in the beginning, middle and end of Bhagavatam, the only thing that's discussed is bhakti, devotional service. There's nothing else in Bhagavatam. So when you give Bhagavatam class, both at the beginning of your class, the middle of your class, and at the end of your class, you talk about bhakti, you talk about pure devotional service and nothing else. The only thing that should come out of your mouth is pure devotional service, nothing else. That is the only instruction that you have to follow when you give Bhagavatam class. So in this way, Mahaprabhu, he bestows his blessings upon Devananda Pandit, empowers him and lets him go. So again, Vrindavan Thakur, he highlights the point that Devananda Pandit, even though through childhood he was speaking in personalist Mayavad philosophy, even though he committed offense against Srivas Thakur, he was able to overcome all this just by serving a great devotee of the Lord, Vikreshwar Pandit. So from this we see the greatness of serving pure devotees of the Lord. The other festival today is Hera Panchami. So this happens the 5 days after the Ratha Yatra. So as you note, the main temple in Jagannath Puri, that's considered to be Dwarka, and the Gundicha temple, that's considered to be Vrindavan. So after the 14-15 days, after Jagannath recovers from his sickness, he asks the goddess of fortune that I would like to go out on this chariot festival. And Prabhupada explains this whole Ratha Yatra, it's actually just an excuse by Jagannath to go to Vrindavan, just an excuse by Jagannath to go to Gundicha to meet the Vrajavasis there. So on the excuse of Ratha Yatra, Lord Jagannath, he leaves the Jagannath temple and he goes to Gundicha, and he tells his consort, Lakshmi Devi, that don't worry, I'll be back soon, just the next day I'll come back. And the goddess of fortune, she's waiting. 1 day goes, 2 days goes, 3 days goes, and still Lord Jagannath, he hasn't returned back to Jagannath Puri. And now goddess of fortune, Mother Lakshmi, she becomes very angry. And this whole festival, Hera Panchami, is based on this anger of Mother Lakshmi. So Hera means, Prabhupada says, Hera means to see, and Panchami is in reference to the 5th day of the moon. So Hera means to see. So this Hera Panchami is the day when Lakshmi Devi, she leaves Jagannath Puri and she goes to Gundicha to see Lord Jagannath. And she's in a very angry mood. I was listening to one lecture by Radhashyam Prabhu. He was explaining the anger of Mother Lakshmi. He was explaining how Mother Lakshmi, she's thinking that, all the great personalities, they always keep their consort to the left side and they stand on the altar with their consort. Like Narayan, he'll have Lakshmi next to her. Lord Ramachandra will have Sita next to her. And in this way, all great personalities, they always go out with their consort. They always have their consort next to them. But look at my Jagannath. My Jagannath, instead of keeping me on his left side on the throne, on the altar, instead he keeps his brother, Balaram and Subhadra. What kind of person is he? What kind of husband is he? Who goes out with their brother and their sister? In this way, Lakshmi Devi, she's chastising Lord Jagannath out of her own transcendental anger.